Hey, welcome to the video, guys. So we're cutting in some more can lights throughout the house. I just wanted to give you a couple pointers that I like to use that I found. You know, this is a single story house. It's got about 18 inches of blown in insulation, so I need to crawl up into the attic and pull that insulation away so I can cut a 6-inch hole right here. So typically what I like to do is go ahead and take some masking tape, Sharpie marker, measure out where you want your fixture, and that's what I've done, is just put a little crosshair on there with the Sharpie, measured it out, centered it on my wall. And so what I do is I take like a little control screwdriver, a very small hole, because I already know pretty much where the trusses are, and I take a piece of solid wire. This is some scrap out of the 14.2 that or 14.3 that I had. It's red, so it's going to contrast with the white blown in insulation. Use the red and the black, that gives you two of them. But you can then stick this all the way up into the ceiling, and it's going to hold in there. What I do is, see if this will show up all right. I bend just a little whoop-de-woo 3-point saddle, however you want to describe it. You know, like I said, about 2 feet back from where it's going to be at. So when I crawl up into the ceiling, I can look out there with the flashlight, see where it's at. I can pull the insulation away, and we can buzz a 6-inch hole. I got another video where we did that. We were replacing some can lights, some actually surface mount fixtures in the kitchen. Same project. So just a little pointer. I got 2 of them on this wall. I'm going to stick both of them up, so when I climb up there I can pull the insulation on both of them back. So alright, stick around. I'm going to leave the camera set up here because insulation, it's about 18 inches deep. I take a dustpan, I crawl up in there, and I pull it back and make sure I am where I think I am with the trusses. And yeah, see you in a minute. Alright, so crawled up in the attic, pull the insulation away. This definitely helps to locate it. These are closer to the edge outside exterior walls, so the pitch of the roof comes down pretty tight. So I got a little chunk of plywood that's about 28 inches by about 12 inches wide, so I can set it down. I have a little platform to lean out. Makes it a lot easier to balance on the trusses. So you're not trying to be directly on the trusses themselves. You can actually just kneel down in a truss bay and work on what you're doing. So insulation's pulled away. I've went ahead, again, we're doing the canless fixtures. They got springs on the side that hold them in place right here. They are in the other video. What I'm doing is I'm having this part ready to go, because when I cut a 6-inch hole in the ceiling here, even though the insulation is pulled back, there's the pressure difference from inside the air, or inside the house with the air, so it's going to start a little draft going through that hole. Hence why we want a draft stop. They got a little gasket here, and why when the insulation gets back on in place, it reduces that. But when this hole's here, there's going to be a little draft, and that blown insulation can come down. So I always like to have this ready to go. So cut the hole, pop it up in there, and then I can attach. There's a quick attachment for the J-box, and I can bring that up through the attic. So I'm going to go ahead and get to this. So this is Racketeer's dust bowl. I got my 6-inch hole saw inside. This is a flexible, I don't know, like rubber material. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out. My little piece of number 14 red. And this, again, this hole saw, the arbor, is got the pilot bit on it. The pilot bit's going to go through my crosshairs, and these hole saws can bind really easy. So I always encourage people, start them in the reverse direction, and so drill into it, start in the reverse direction. That's going to start you a groove. This is going to catch like 99% of it. Other than that, I have put up painter's plastic, got a drop cloth, my bucket, my vacuum, everything's here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to buzz this hole, and so we're going forward. Okay, I'm in, so now I'm kicking it in reverse. Start real slow. Okay, we're through. See, with all that vibration, got blown in insulation. I'm gonna take that, tuck it right back up inside there. So, you saw how clean that was as far as catching the majority of the dust. Now I'm gonna go ahead and vacuum it out before I turn it upside down in my bucket. That got the majority of the dust out. Then I take this and I just turn it upside down. And that's all you got to do. You don't got to fight getting that 6-inch piece out. That clears out your hole saw. It does it relatively easy. Put it on lock so I don't accidentally hit it. And then before any more of this insulation gets down, I'm going to go ahead and get this up in place. And there you go. Now I can do the rest of it. I'm going to do the other hole behind me where we have a little workstation over the desk. But yeah, now everything can be done from up above. I can make up my J boxes on the ground where it's easy. I know I have, you know, about 4 feet in between the fixtures. Make a tail a little bit longer, crawl up there, and then like I said, I can have the J boxes all made up. And then all I'm doing is I'm plugging it together, screwing it in to what's already in the ceiling. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and knock the other one out, and then I'm going to show you the fun part of this, which is because there was no existing boxes here, we got to get power up into the ceiling, so I got to tap into the switch that's right here on the wall. That's the fun part, so stay tuned. We will get to that in a minute. Alright, so what we need to do now is we've got our 2-gang switch box here, but this living room had no lights, no light fixtures in the ceiling. We've now cut in our 2 can light locations, still have our plastic up, but this is what we have here. Is if you've ever gone in, rented a place, or got into a house and you couldn't find there was no lights in the room, this right here. This switch, this is porch lights over here, this switch here is the top half of the receptacle. You see it turning on and off. So it's common that they did this. This was a cheap way of getting by without having to put a ceiling fixture in. It's code compliant, but it doesn't really give you a lot of options. So it depends on where you're at. It's pretty common to have top be the switched, bottom be the unswitched. There's a little tab on the side of the receptacle. They just break off. I'll have another video on that. So we know this switch has a switch leg in it, but it doesn't go up, it actually goes down. So what I need to do is I'm going to take this box out. Now there's a lot of things where I'll turn the switch off, and like if I'm changing a light fixture, and I'll safe it off because the switch is technically my disconnect for when I'm working the light fixture itself, as long as there's no unswitched lines. But this one is going to have an unswitched line, so I want to give a little shout out to Klein Tools. This is a little residential circuit tracer model that they have, the ET300. I also recommend get some pads down. Got my trusty little tote with all my hand tools in it to do this project. We are going to be cutting out the existing box to fish a new wire down the wall, and we'll be replacing it with this adjustable box here. But this little circuit tracer is really nice. It's a 4-piece. You can get this down, I think I got it at Home Depot, 50 bucks or something, 35 bucks back in the day. It's a couple years old, but it works pretty well for most residential applications. It has the accessory here. This is the transmitter. This is the receiver. So this is what you take to the panel. This is what you plug into the load. This is a live circuit tracer. So the side that is hot, I'm going to put it in. You see that little red light comes on. Now it's sending a high range frequency on the line that the receiver is going to pick up at the panel. So, but right now, this works obviously for receptacles. This works to where you can just plug the transmitter into this little adapter, and then you can screw it into a can light, turn the switch on, whatever it is, it'll let you know. And they have an adapter here, same thing. Difficult to do this one-handed holding the camera. You plug it in there, and it gives you the ability to clamp on with these alligator clips at the end, which actually do have a little insulation sleeve on them. So again, if you're not comfortable with electricity, hire a professional. But this is I have a much more powerful circuit tracer in my van that I take out if I'm doing commercial projects, but this seems to work pretty good, and it's not nearly as expensive as the one I have in my van. So as a homeowner, having one around the house to do little projects, this is a pretty convenient one to have. So I'm going to go shut the circuit off, come back, we're going to open this box up, and I'll show you how you take one of these guys out. Alright, so circuit is off. Always good when you're taking covers off, especially with painting. Kind of take it easy. Sometimes I've had people where they paint around them, and when you hammer the cover off, they actually chip the paint. So sometimes I'll even run a razor knife around it. So here we are. There's an Astro timer on the front porch lights. I'm just going to get it out of the way here so we can see inside the box. Verify there's no other circuits in there, because just because I turned the one circuit off that was in here doesn't mean there's not another one. You always want to be cautious. So my hot tester, these are not 100%, but again, the Fluke model that I use, Fluke, Klein, Ideal makes some good stuff, so is Greenlee. There's a lot of good ones out there, but I've never had a Fluke. I've had it tell me it's hot when it's not, but I've never had it tell me it is not hot when it was. Again, for residential wiring, I'm pretty comfortable working things hot as it is, so I'm opening up the box. I got to get all this stuff disconnected, because I'm going to actually have to fish a cable down the wall, and being that this is exterior, this is insulated, it's not going to be really easy just to stuff a cable down like it is when you're on the inside of a house or an interior wall that's not insulated, where you can drop the cable down, it falls right down the wall. Being insulated is a little more difficult, so what I do with these is, again, I like these boxes here. They got a little slider adjustment bracket on the side, so when I cut this box out, I can slide this right in, screw it to the stud, and we're good to go. So open this up, see which side. This is the stud side here. other thing I like to do before I get too carried away is I tape a little box up, because I'm going to be making a mess right here on the wall. Now, I got plastic out, I got a little piece of paper, you know, painter's paper, you know, you tape along the wall to capture the majority or any of the little wild and crazies that get out of there. But this is not much, just a cardboard box. You tape it up. Sometimes it takes a piece or two because it wants to pull itself off the wall. But I've had good luck with this, especially if you're working in some high-end custom homes. You can mitigate as much mess as possible. This ain't going to do it all, but it is a good start, and it helps a lot. So, a little bit of prep work, and you have less cleanup. Because when I'm done, I want to get out. Go home, see my kids, see my wife, enjoy life, because work is not all about, you know, or life's not all about working and making money. Yeah, it makes it easier, but it's not what I truly enjoy. So, right here, pretty common that switch plugs have a red wire. This is all 3 conductor, like 14-3, 12-3. So you're going to have a black, a red, a white, and a ground. Your red is typically your switched. I always like to keep the primary color, the unswitched leg, for constant power. This applies even when I'm in commercial work. We're using MC cable, comes the same way. So, anyways, this was taped up, so this receptacle is not stabbed in the back, because that is probably the #1 thing that I have to change the most. Not so much with the switches, but definitely receptacles. Don't stab in the back. Pigtail it off, you know, tie everything together with the wire nut, go around the screws on the side. These are actually higher end switches. They have a clamp on the side. It doesn't cost that much more. It's relatively little money. If you're, you know, doing 1,000 plugs and switches, then yes, maybe $1 is going to make a difference. But if you're doing 20 on your home, $20 is not going to break the bank, especially if it's, you know, a higher quality. It's going to last longer. You don't have any problems with it. There we go. Being stubborn. But this switch is perfectly good. We'll use it as a backup. So as soon as I take, of course, don't have my electrical tape on me. So I'm going to safe that off. Typically, as soon as I expose a wire, now this is non-electrical tape, but it will work for the time being. Just in case for some reason that breaker is to get turned back on. Just insulate it. Reduce as much as possible. Reduce your exposure to possible, because I don't have a lockout on it. It's a residential house. Typically we don't get that carried away. Again, astrological timers, got side clamps. Because if you do, you're comfortable working things hot. I can take that apart, and really all I got to do is safe off find which conductor's incoming to the box, and safe it off. That's going to be under this wire nut here. easy to separate this stuff out, especially when you know the power's off. Take those off. And get your neutrals opened up. I dislike when they twist the wire nuts so much. It's typically because they have it on a drill. Just my preference. You don't need to have 10 twists on your wires or have them twisted all the way back to where they come into the box to know you have a good connection. And this box has already been changed out because there's no, like this, where the grounds are twisted together all the way back to where they come in together. It's just, it doesn't need to be that way, and they usually have a ground crimp on them. I was trained a long time ago when I was doing custom homes. The guy said, I don't want to see a ground crimp. We don't use them. We're going to be pigtailing everything anyways. You have wire nuts right there. We're pigtailing the hots and the neutrals, and that's how he did business. And he had we did high-end like Street of Dreams homes and whatnot, because that's what his experience was when he had service calls and people lost half their circuit or half their house was down. He'd usually find it was a poor connection with a receptacle that was stabbed in the back and or hadn't been pigtailed together and the receptacle failed. They were using the receptacle as the splicing point. Okay, so there is 2 cables coming in and out the top, which is one going out the bottom. So we got power coming in. One of these is a switch leg going out. So I could go turn the breaker on right now, come in, find out which one's hot, which one's not. That's going to tell me what the incoming power is. And then we have our 14.3, again, black, red, white. Red is the switched leg that's going down here to the receptacles. So when I fish down the new wire, and I'm going to put a dimmer on these lights, we're going to take the switch plugs away because you don't want to plug something in and have it running on a dimmer. I'm going to go ahead and tie the red and the black together. Then I don't have to go through and change all the plugs. They're going to be power all the time in the receptacles, and the wire I'm fishing down then goes up to the can lights, and they're on a dimmer. Voila, I got lights in my living room. If I wasn't putting in a dimmer, you could leave the switch plugs too. If you like to have corner lamps, it's an option. I always give it to people. It's nice in master bedrooms, typically with the end tables and whatnot for reading lamps, and having a switch right there. So, all right. So, got this just in case. Again, I'd be typically using electrical tape. Again, be pretty safe in resi. Using a little bit, so I'm not going to get carried away with it because I know this is shut off. Again, like I said, I always take a razor knife. I got my box set up because I don't want to catch any of this little, from the old mudding and taping. If you start working on it, it's going to crack and want to fall off, and it's just falling right into there. So I'm going to turn my light on here. Hopefully it doesn't mess up the video too much. Okay, so I'm taking is a number 3 flat blade, putting it between the stud and the box, just kind of opening it up a little bit, getting a little gap in there, and you'll see why here in a second, because there's 2 nails on this box on a bracket, and that's what I need to cut, is those nails. And that's where this wonderful little tool comes into play. I'm going to see if I can get, so what I do is I got my screwdriver in there, and I can see a couple pieces of sheetrock just fell down into place here. So with that light, I can see that nail in there. I'm going to reach in, and make sure the screwdriver's not in the way. Reach in and cut that nail. That one was a little stubborn. See, now the box moves a little bit. I'm doing the same thing on the top. There it is. So the box is now loose. I can take this out. That's not quite, we're not quite done here. So because this box has the little non-metallic pressure squeeze connectors, I'm just going to reach in there, snap them off. So these cables come out. But what we have here is this little bracket up here. So sometimes I can just roll the box down, pull it out. When you have a couple cables coming in like this, sometimes it can be a little more difficult to get the cables out, especially in an insulated wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that oscillating tool, I'm just going to cut that off on up above, and there's one the same on the bottom. So we are going to get that out of the way. Not sure where I had that. Hopefully that gives you a decent enough view. So, you can hold on to it. You want to be careful you're not getting, you know, when it pulls through, that you're not continuing back into the cables back there. But now I got a flat top. Push it up. I can get this bottom one off. I always like the kneeling pads too below me because I can set my tools down. I'm not damaging the floor. Very finished products. It's an extra protection on top of the paper or your drop cloth. So these are all typically stapled within 8 inches. We'll be getting those loose too. So this is a little bit more challenging. And some, it's a matter of finding out which one's going to be the easiest one to get out. Sometimes the bottom one, there's only one cable coming in there. Try to get that loose enough. so it's coming out. When you start getting it out, sometimes it's easier. Just grab one conductor at a time instead of trying to get all of the 4 conductors out at once. This is the hardest part, because once you get one side of the cables out, one's coming from the other side. Typically come out pretty easy. And there we have it. Got our box out of the way. So now it's going to be much easier to get up there, fish down a new cable. Sometimes, you know, there's different ways of doing it. This is just the setup we have, but if I like to, I can go in here with the flat blade number 3, and I can put it between the wall and the Romex if it's on and it's stapled. You just kind of push up and wiggle it back and forth. Again, I wouldn't do this with the old stuff, but usually they pop out relatively easy. Must have used 125s on this, deeper staples. What this does is allows you a little more freedom of movement for your cables when you're putting in the new box. This one is being a little bit stubborn. And this also helps when you know what's in the wall, because you're basically, in a sense, working blind. But if you know how something's built, you usually know how to take it apart. There we go. Alright, got the staple out. This allows me to move these 2 upper cables around a little bit more and do the same thing with the bottom. Bottom one's not as big an issue. It's got some flex in it. So, alright. Oh, sorry about that. So, I've already been to the top of the wall when I was clearing out the insulation for the lights. There's a hole there already. I'm going to stick down a beaded chain that I have, and then I have a long magnet, flexible magnet, because again, I'm right in the corner of the house, but the hole on top does seem to be big enough to get another 14.2 out of there, which is all I need. It's a 15 amp circuit. So yeah, we're going to go through the fishing process. I'll show you the setup I have. It usually works pretty good in insulated walls, because you start stuffing a Romex in the wall, it gets caught up in the insulation. It can be kind of a pain. We got fishing rods, hard fiberglass rods. I might just take one of those up in the attic and fish it down the hole too, because it's easier to reach in the stud bay, especially when you have a 2-gang box. It's pretty easy to get your hand in there. And yeah, so to be continued. All right, I just crawled up there and decided to just go with a fiberglass fishing rod. Pushed it straight down. Comes out right here. So I'm going to actually take you out. I'm going to make up. You gotta love the attic work. So I'm going to make the J boxes up together. I'm going to take you out. I'm going to show you in the garage. And then I'm going to crawl up in the attic, do all that work. I'm going to tape the switch leg on so I can then pull it down into the box here, instead of pulling it up and then having to do a bunch of makeup up in the attic where it's really tight and it's hard to get to. Try and do, it's a term I was taught a long time ago by some old timers that wanted to share their knowledge of how to work smart, not hard, and it's economy of motion. And when you have like a prep table, you can do your work on a prep table. That's where you want to do it, man. Sit down, make up your receptacles, you know, make up a whole box of them, so then you just walk around the job and you're not dragging more stuff around. But yeah, so we're going to go out. I know the distance in between the fixtures, the distance coming down. If I waste a little bit by putting a little extra Romex on it, so what? You know, that's worth it to me to waste 2 or 3 feet of Romex versus me scrunched up in an attic in a hard spot trying to make up a box where it's like I might not make a good enough connection, or, you know, who knows. So it's just easier that way, you know. If you yeah. So we'll get to it here in just a sec. Okay, we're just gonna make these J boxes up. So this one's 4 feet. This is gonna be in between the 2 fixtures. Again, this is the quick connect that I got to plug together up there. These are both going to be at 27K. It's the color selector. So you open up the box, pull those guys out. Flat blade, stick it in side, rotate it back and forth a couple times. Got a trusty little garbage box there. Again, these are an RC50 Romex connector. Or hopefully I'm doing the most of this where you can see it. Again, 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of the sheathing inside. Because these are lights, I'm okay with these quick connect little Wagos they have. I don't use them if it's, you know, lighting. It's okay, because typically LED and whatnot is not drawing a large load. But I always double check. Make sure you're pushing it in all the way. You're getting a good connection. These LEDs, these fixtures, I think are carrying 13 watts. You know, it's like this is not carrying a lot of power, so the connection isn't as critical as if you were, you know, like plugs in a house where you might be plugging in a space heater or a, you know, AC unit, or, you know, a little plug-in window unit or something. I put them in, curl them in there. You know, I can see connection's good. Closing the door, taking some tape, just making sure the door doesn't pop back open. You know, and then on the end, I just like to fold it over just a little bit. Leaves you a little buddy tail. So if you ever get back up there, you got to service it. You're not looking for the end of the tape. Okay, so this one's ready to go. I'm going to set that off to the side. So I have a 7, well, this is actually about an 8-foot coil. This is what's going to be fishing down to the wall to the first can light right above it. I just have it coiled up already, so it's easy for me to carry up into the ceiling. Same thing, opening the box up. Rock that connector back and forth a couple times. Pops right out. Always have your little box or bucket, garbage box or bucket right next to you. Again, RC50. This is how, there's a lot of people, they get their knife out and they strip Romex down the middle, or they slice it with their knife where you can damage the inside conductors. I was taught a long time ago, the newer stuff especially, I'm not cutting through, I'm just kind of scoring it, just like the Romex strippers do. And you can tell because I'm not actually getting through the insulation, it's just got a score mark. Alright, so I've scored it, score mark right there, so I know I'm not cutting into the insulation. I cut it, I twist it a couple times back and forth, I pull it off. You know, pull that paper back. I'm going to line these two guys up. Again, lining up the sheathing at the same spot. Again, 1/4 to 1/2 inch inside. I'm cutting these guys and making them up. Just pair everything up together. You know, then I'll go by. And double check. One at a time. Making sure you can look in the window, you're seeing the end of them. Okay, I can see in the window all my wires are in there. The fixture wires themselves are pushed in well. I'm going to just curve it, curl it up in there. And throw a little tape around her. And what do we leave at the end? Leave a little tail for your buddy, little buddy tail. Got chewed out when I was, I think it was a 2nd year apprentice for doing that by my journeyman. So now I coil these up. I'm carrying this up into the attic. You know, all I got to do is uncoil it, twist together my quick connects, which I have couple more of these, so I have this sitting up in the ceiling now. Gave me the chance to plug that hole real quick, so now I go up in there, I unroll them, look for the little guide, put it on, thread it in. I'm going to tie the tail to that fiberglass rod I have coming down to the switch, and I'm going to come back down, pull it down, and make up the switch. All right. Okay, so here we are. I crawled up in the ceiling, taped it on, pushed it down. So this is what we got. The rod just works better. I was thinking about trying the ball chain, which works pretty good when you're doing offset fishing and stuff, or you're fishing into a void you can't see. But this, these old flexi rods. This one actually I think glows in the dark. They got some newer ones out that don't splinter like these older ones do. But they really come in handy. So I just removed the box that was catching all my stuff so I could push the rod out of the wall. But here is my new switch leg here. So now with this, I'm just kind of straighten all these twists and turns because they had those twisted up all the way back to where they were coming in the box. Makes it kind of a pain to fish into the new box. And so you just kind of, they don't have to be perfect 100%, but it does help. And then I just put a little wrap of tape around the end of the conductors so they don't get caught up and you end up fishing one in or two of them in and one of them pokes out, you know, on the back side, and you got to go back and do it all again. Cable from the bottom going out to our receptacles below us. And like I said out there, I don't like to, and this is just my preference, I don't like to put the cables into the box and go back afterwards with a knife and reach in there and slice it. No, I've repaired far too many switches and things of when you go in, the insulation here is actually sliced through, and that's not what you want. And it's fine when you're stripping it until you start bending it and forming it into the box and this insulation opens up. Then I've actually had them where they then short out at that time. So I do have the only thing with these boxes here is when you're using them with a deep device such as this, the side walls, these little tabs, which are the guides for the adjustable side, these just the very tips get in the way. So I typically just cut the very front of them off. It doesn't affect the panel that goes in the side or where it holds. You want those back as far as you can anyways. But that allows your device to sit in centered and not be pushed over just a little bit. That's the only thing that I've noticed with these boxes. So other than that, they are very convenient to use for situations such as this. Just trim it a little bit closer here. All right. Come in here, get the little tabs, push them in to where they've got some slack and they're not going to give me too much trouble. On the bottom I get the one. Okay, so again, I'm going to deal with one side at a time. One side at a time. So I'm going to get the side that has the most in, the top side. Just kind of, and as I said, I didn't want to strip it after it was in, so again, take my strippers, I'm just scoring the outside, I'm not cutting through. I showed you out on the table. If you have a good pair of strippers, this newer cable, all you got to do is score that outside and it will snap and peel off. Then I have a nice clean cut. It's not all jagged and crooked, and I know I'm not cutting the conductors right here with a razor knife, because that is an issue. Do it long enough. If you do service work, you will come across that. So like I said, I just try and, don't damage what you're putting in. Okay, so now I've put that one in. Start guiding in bottom guy. There we go. Okay, so they're all kind of wanting to go in there, and you just, as you're sliding it back, you're wanting to get that same thing. You want to see that insulation come up of the sheathing, the outside of the cable. Upper ones are looking good. They're in. It's usually the oddball that you got to go in at an angle. Oh, yep, it's just catching right there. There we go. All right. Again, I like these boxes. They're the adjustable ones. They're good for like retrofit applications like we're doing here. Allows you to cut out an existing box, makes it easier to fish wires in. You slide that back. The box can be right out nice and flush. Usually flushes out a little bit better than most new installs. In. I'm gonna bring it around here so you can get a look inside. As you can tell, hopefully that's focusing okay. Got sheathing in the box, even the lower one, sheathing's in the box. So, all right. So now, just about the makeup. Now I want to go out, and now that I have this all opened up, everything's still individual, I can go on, I can re-energize the breaker for a minute, make sure all these are safed off, nothing's touching. So wherever I've taped these together in case there's some sort of weird wiring, make sure my hots are separated. Because, you know, for some weird reason they could be feeding it up from their receptacles and done it backwards. I've seen all sorts of wiring in homes. You know, we just had a customer had a house fire, and we're out there trying to put it back together, and I got some pictures. Oh my goodness. Old farmer, been working on his house for years, but had no idea. You know, there's a lot of ways to make things work, but there's very few ways to make it work right. So I'm going to go turn on the breaker real quick. Alright. Breaker's back on, so I just go one at a time. There we go. That's my incoming hot. So put these guys off to the bottom. That's incoming. The other one, this is my switch leg going to my porch light. The one that was going down to the bottom is my receptacles. But yeah, so there's my hot. That's my new switch leg for the can lights. So now that I've ID'd it, I'm going to go turn it back off so I can work it comfortably. Alright, she's turned off again. Bringing in my little trim kit here. This is what I carry around in my van. Gives me a nice assortment of wire nuts, a couple connectors, some staples, caterpillars for leveling devices. Alright, so I got my ground pigtails from earlier. I'm going to try and not blind the camera here. Give myself a little. So, but like I said, when you get into practice of hooking things up, when you hook things up, ground, neutral, hot. When you disconnect, hot, neutral, ground. So again, I wish these weren't all just curly cued together because somebody felt the need to twist them together as much as they do. And even though I'm putting in a dimmer and it's got its own pigtail, I'm want to tuck these back as far as I can into the back. Got my little tote that I just drop all my strippings in. Got my 2 pigtails from earlier. I do not like ground crimps. They do not allow you a lot of, it's always a pain, especially if they cut them all short. The old times they used to do that, and that was accepted back then, you know, and it's still code compliant, but if you're coming in, you got to cut that little crimp off, you know. So I make my grounds up. I like these boxes too because they're big. They got a lot of room in them. So I take that, stuff it in the back. So I got my neutrals. My Astro timer does require a neutral connection, so I do have pigtail for that one too. And most of these, I didn't take the twists all the way out. You can actually twist them back together if they look good. Otherwise, I like a new, clean, stripped end. These don't look too bad. And if I'm using wire nuts, again, I like Ideal wire nuts, the wing nuts. They seem to make the best connection. I do not like the wire nuts that come with the fixtures. Those are usually garbage. Throw them away when you get them. Maybe save them for a rainy day if you absolutely need them, but for the most part. And again, as I'm picking up my box, I got my little pigtail. I'm only keeping the typically switches. You're not switching, or you don't need a neutral. There is a new code that we now have to have neutrals in the switch box, unless you don't have to. If you have a conduit or a raceway going to it where you can pull another conductor, you don't have to. So if you have a piece of flex going down the wall or something, you don't need to do that. So anyways, my battery's flashing at me, so I'm going to try and get this guy finished up here. So again, I'm taking the constant hots. My switch plugs, I'm just going to make all my plugs hot down below now. So I'm tying that red end to the constant hot. I'm going to throw my pigtails on there for my devices and call it good. Hopefully my camera holds out for a little bit longer here. But I will be getting some new camera equipment here to get hopefully better content for you guys. I know these videos aren't the best, but camera equipment is expensive. So I'm making sure we're getting all that tape off the old connections. Get all the ends of the wires right up to the end, and I'm pinching them with my fingers so I know none of them are backing out as I'm twisting this down on it. That's a common problem when you're using wire nuts, so if you got to be cautious of it. Again, trying to leave as much as possible. Alright, so I got my 2 switch legs. Astro timer is on this side. Got my neutral connection, and my new dimmer's over here. And for a remodel box, it's not horrible, but you know, get everything tucked into the back. It doesn't take much to make it clean. You don't have to stuff it in there. Everything will be easy to kind of pull back out. And we got line, load, and neutral on the back. And typically, if you were trimming your switches out in the house, I have had inspectors be so picky as to have my line and load, which is line is incoming power on the top of the switch, just like every other disconnect is supposed to be. So they are out there. Don't fight with them about it. Just good practice to get into anyways. All right. But on these devices, it does call for line and load, like GFCIs, etc. Still with me? All right, the battery's hanging tough for a few minutes longer at least. But you kind of see, even if we do get cut off here and I have to charge it up a little bit, you see the process. This is just trimming, switching a dimmer. Or sorry, an Astro. This is an Astro timer. These are really nice. Takes photo eyes out of the equation. Less things to go wrong. And old habit, just a little wrap of tape around the outside. Not stretching it so it shrinks or anything, but just one more insurance, covers the screws. So, Astro timers in place. I just got my dimmer over here. So I've got the Lutron dimmer. Again, you got black, red, and red with a white stripe. These can be used in a three-way application. The reds would be your travelers, your black is your common. If you were using it in a single pole situation like I am, red with a white stripe, you just cap it off. I will put a old wire nut on it, well, new wire nut, but. And then black is incoming, red is outgoing to the switch, and then you got your ground pigtail. So, and like I said, I didn't need to put another ground in there, but these things are never long enough to have that whole ground out there. I like to make them up, stick them in the back, and then my pigtail here could have been a little bit longer too. But, alright. Okay, incoming is the old painted wire. That's easy to tell right here, my old pigtail. Again, ideal wire nuts, twisters. They are the best in my opinion. I like to use them. Don't really like the combo ones. A lot of people like those. Hey, if that's what you like, it makes a good connection, it's fine. I like the tans and the reds, not the tan red combos. So, again, I'm going to bend these over and just kind of so they roll up into the back. So when I need to get in here again, oh, I gotta break those tabs off the side here. So it will fit next to the other device. When you break the tabs, you are reducing the rating on them a little bit. But when you're dealing with LEDs, you don't really usually have to worry about that because you're not drawing that much power. So, let me get a couple screws. And the trim screws down here. These put back in. And re-energize and get some new lights on. I don't tighten them up until I get them in there, and you kind of work it just a little bit where you can tell you're going to be flush and square and not going to be crooked in the wall. Leave them just a little loose until I can tell I'm getting those in the proper place, because that dimmer wants to come out just a little bit. Oop. And my weigh-in on the screws for devices, being horizontal or vertical, everybody I've known in my 30 years, well. Alright, so it appears my end of my video got cut off, so I was weighing in on trim screws, being vertical or horizontal. I always take them vertical. In my 30 years, that's how I've been trained. I think aesthetically it looks better. There's longer lines going up and down versus side to side. I have never had or heard any issue about dust collecting if they're horizontal. That has nothing to do with it. It's all about aesthetics, especially if you're doing high-end homes, custom work. Those little details make a big difference. So obviously this works. We have dimming fixtures and our little workstation here. 2 can lights. So if you don't have lights in your ceiling, it is not the end of the world. It can be remedied. So thanks for tuning in. Again, if you get anything out of the content, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. It all helps. We're just trying to put out good content for good practice electrical work. So we appreciate you, and if you have any ideas you'd like to see, leave it in the comments. Send me a message. Alright, thanks.